Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, Secretary, IAS Secretary, Consumer Affairs, Mr. Dongre, Indian Pulses and Grains Association, and the board members, respected ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and privilege to address this inaugural National Conference on Pulses in India, the land and the heart of pulses. I'm extremely happy at this wonderful initiative of starting a national conference on pulses, and I commend the dedicated organizers for a job very well done. CISL supports such national initiatives, and under CISL's captaincy and patronage, it will continue to do so. We had a successful National Pulse Convention in China, and now a very good one here in India, and another one in Ethiopia underway. Let me briefly explain you about CISL's IPTIC. CISL is the one and only international global confederation of pulse trade and industry. CISL's headquartered in Dubai is a not-for-profit international confederation. We promote the awareness, production, consumption, and free trade of pulses. CISL represents each and every part of pulses supply chain, such as growers, traders, exporters, importers, government bodies, the trade promotion bodies, multilateral bodies, processors, and consumers. CISL's IPTIC enjoys observer status with multilateral bodies such as FAO, WHO, and Codex Alimentarius. CISL is a sole authoritative confederation of over 12 national associations and 800 individual organizations engaged in pulses trade from 50 countries. CISL's IPTIC represents an industry of over 60 million tons in pulse production valued at $100 billion. Every year, CISL's IPTIC organizes annual conventions are well attended by over 800 influential delegates from 50 countries. Let me elaborate on some key initiatives CISL undertook since last year. CISL has moved its headquarters now to Dubai Multi-Commodity Center, and I welcome you all to visit our office whenever you are in Dubai. CISL started trade dispute resolution mechanisms for a speedy and inexpensive way to resolve the disputes. CISL supports a transparent and a regulated price discovery mechanism, pulse trade and industry. Talks with DMCC and Dubai Gold Commodity Exchange are well underway to create an international platform for the pulse futures. CISL is in talks with Food and Agriculture Organization to declare 2016 as the International Year of Pulse. We have the support of Turkish and Canadian governments, and I urge to throw the support of Indian government behind this noble cause, and I request and thank well in advance from Mr. Agarwal for the support. With this year's CISL's World Pulse Convention under my presidency, I'm excited in welcoming you all and your guests to CISL's 2012 convention in Dubai, which will be in the Atlantis Palm Dubai Hotel, and we expect more than 1,000 delegates from 50 countries. And since we have a booth here during this conference, for those who couldn't register online, you can have an on-site registration with CISL staff. As the global confederation of the pulse industry, CISL stands for all that is important to the pulse trade. Your continued support and commitment has allowed us to grow and move forward with a common vision on how pulses play and will continue to play a critical role on the planet today and the future of its people. I wish you all a very successful and a happy inaugural National Convention on Pulses in India, and look forward to seeing you all in Dubai. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, Secretary, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Government of India, the chief guest of this function. Mr. Hakan Bahachechi, President, CICILS. Mr. Praveen Dongre, President of the India Pulses and Grains Association. My colleague, Mr. Jignesh Shah, Founder Chairman and Managing Director of the FT Group of Companies and Vice Chairman MCX. Mr. Mahesh Patel, Mr. Bimal Kothari, Mrs. Ganga Murthy, Dr. Pavaskar, and my friend G. Chandrasekhar in the audience, distinguished participants in this Global Pulses Conclave 2012, ladies and gentlemen. I'm indeed grateful to the organizers for inviting me to this important Global Conclave on Pulses 2012. It's a well-known fact that an increase in per capita income and urbanization leads to changes in the composition of the food basket, with consumers moving from coarse cereals to superior cereals, rice and wheat, and pulses. This would particularly be true in the case of very poor consumers, if such consumers on the margin of existence, say in a state like Andhra Pradesh in India, were eating kanji or porridge previously. If their economic situation suddenly improves on account of the implementation of a new program, it is inevitable that they should aspire to eat idlis, for which urad dal is an essential ingredient. A large proportion of the Indian population is vegetarian, and pulses are an important source of protein in the daily diet, as they have as much as 18 to 25% protein in them. Just as significant for India, pulses happen to be one of the most economical sources of protein for human beings. India is a net importer of pulses. India produces around a quarter of the world's total production of pulses, accounting for 1/3 of the total global acreage under pulses, according to the FAO of the United Nations. India's share in world pulses import accounted for 33.3% in 2009, the latest data available from the FAO. Indians consume 30% of the world's pulses, but domestic production of pulses has not kept pace with population growth. The production of pulses has grown at only 1% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, from 1951 to 2011, compared to a population growth of about 2% during the same period. Even in a smaller time frame, during the last 10 years, the CAGR of pulses production remained at 1%. Even as the CAGR is low, the aggregate production figures conceal a more forbidding picture. Production growth of pulses has been subject to high volatility from year to year, almost in the range of plus 15% to minus 15% year on year. According to the estimates of the Reserve Bank of India, our central bank, per capita domestic availability of pulses has dropped from 23.3 kilos per person per year in 1951 to 15.5 kilos in 2011. Let me mention the main reasons for the low productivity of pulses in India. Out of 22.1 million hectares, only about 16% of the area is under irrigation. Farmers devote rather inadequate attention to the pulses cultivation due to lower returns compared with cash crops, poor storability and lack of storage facility, fluctuations in weather conditions which affect the crop very much, farmers are stuck into the cobweb of lower prices and lower investment. The physical market conditions and the long supply chain impulses are posing a serious threat to the price realization of farmers. The highly unorganized physical markets impulses and lack of sufficient storage capacity threaten the very survival of small farmers, while imperfections in the supply chain cause massive price loss to farmers. It is in this context that I must mention, as Chairman MCX, about futures trading in commodities which perform two functions: price discovery and price risk management. Price discovery function enables market participants to know and understand the market sentiment and to take trading decisions accordingly. The price risk management, or hedging function, helps those with underlying exposure to commodities, such persons are called hedgers, as you all know, to insure themselves against adverse price movements in future. Futures trading should normally help farmers plan their cropping pattern based on forward prices on the exchanges. For processors and traders faced with the risk of adverse price movements, futures trading is a veritable boon. They can buy or sell futures contracts and lock in their profits or margins. Online trading in commodity futures or derivatives benefits the markets in several ways. Firstly, it facilitates larger geographical dispersion of trade and widens the market access, which promotes better price discovery with lower price volatility. Secondly, it ensures market efficiency by incorporating all information into the price determination process quickly and effectively in a manner that is clear to all participants. Thirdly, it minimizes trading costs through wider spreads, lower fees, lower brokerages, and lower commissions. Fourthly, it increases the volume of trade in the market by regularly attracting investors from different parts of the country through widely distributed computer terminals. Finally, online trading promotes transparency and minimizes market abuses, as it offers improved methods of surveillance and a more accurate audit trail. The volatility of prices introduces an important element of uncertainty in the commodity trade, and thus represents a risk for producers, traders, processors, and other consumers. The inter-year and intra-year price volatility poses serious problems to farmers and makes their income highly unpredictable and investment unprofitable. The farming community has derived immense benefits from hedging against the volatility of pulses prices. There has also been a large indirect impact of the futures market bestowed on farmers by way of improved prices and transparency in the knowledge and dissemination of prices across various trading centers. This has had a profound impact on the evolving of a pan-India market for the commodity, as against the fragmented market for various types of pulses that was the case earlier. Steps are being taken both by the Forward Markets Commission and the national exchanges in India to spread the awareness among more and more farmers about the benefits of futures trading and to encourage their direct participation. In the new economic order, led primarily by market forces, national and international, devoid of state controls, futures trading has a special significance. This is particularly true for emerging economies with significant contribution of agriculture to the national economy. Various expert studies could not find any link between futures trading and inflation. The Abhijit Sen Committee in India, appointed by the Government of India, found, I quote, in particular, real prices of tur were lower during 2005 and 2006, when futures trading was significant, than in either 2003, before futures, or 2007, after delisting. This evidence contradicts the claim that futures trading caused excessive increase in tur prices. Not long after the Abhijit Sen Committee submitted its report, the Reserve Bank of India, in its annual report, has also come to the same conclusion, namely that there is no nexus between commodity futures trading and price inflation. The following information on pulses shows that tuar and udad prices were near perfectly discovered by the futures market. At the time of delisting of tuar in January 2007, futures prices were in contango. That is, futures prices of January contract were lower than that of February contract, which in turn was lower than the March contract. Thus, the futures market was predicting a rise in the price going forward due to a fundamental economic factor, the impending supply shortage. At the time of delisting of udad in January 2007, futures prices were in backwardation. That is, futures prices of January contract was higher than that of February contract, which in turn was higher than the March contract. This was indeed found to be true going forward. Thus, the futures market was merely a signal for future prices of commodities, including udad and tuar. By delisting futures trading, the market lost an important source of price signal. More importantly, prices of tuar and udad continued to be volatile and continued to rise even after they were delisted. This clearly shows that futures trading cannot be held responsible for price rise. I would like to end by making an earnest request to the Government of India that in view of these empirical facts, they should see their way to allow the resumption of futures trading in tuar and udad for the benefit of stakeholders at the earliest. I'm grateful to the organizers for inviting me and for permitting me to place these views before this distinguished audience. I wish this three-day conference all success. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Good evening. The Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, IAS Secretary, Department of Consumer Affairs, Your Excellency, Dr. Chrissy Muhogo, the High Commissioner of Malawi, Mr. Praveen Dongre, President, Indian Pulses and Grain Association, Mr. Kothari, the Vice President of Grain Association, Mr. Hakan, my good friend from SACIL President, Chairman MCX, Venkat Chari, Vice Chairman, my good friend Jignesh Shah. I feel especially honored in being accorded this opportunity to address the Global Pulses Conclave 2012 and wish to add my warm welcome to all of you. Pulses are the most important source of vegetable protein and integral part of the Indian and global diet. Today, the pulses market is in excess of over $100 billion. The Indian subcontinent is the largest consumer of pulses in the world, with demand far outstripping domestic supply. Traditionally, this deficit has been largely met by imports from Canada, USA, Australia, and Myanmar. However, in recent times, Africa has emerged as an important supplier, particularly of the tur, which is pigeon peas, chickpeas, and grain mung beans. Africa pulses are now well accepted in Indian markets, with most millers acknowledging the processing outturns are economically viable. Although African pulses production is predominantly smallholder, substantial quantities are still produced. Indian pulses imports from Africa were about 60,000 metric tons per year in 2005, and we anticipate this figure will increase to 600,000 metric tons by year 2015. The fold is tenfold increase is in 10 years. ETG has substantially contributed to this by running smallholder schemes. The increased production has also resulted in large investments in processing. Export Trading Group has a processing capacity as of now of 100,000 metric tons of pulses in Africa and is set to increase this to 200,000 metric tons in the next 18 months. However, consumption too is growing dramatically. Global population is increasing. Incomes are growing and people are opting for healthier vegetarian diets, a significant component in which is pulse. The increased consumption will place a huge burden on already stretched land resources. The West has virtually no farming land left. In India and the East, industrialization is fast displacing agricultural land and farming is going out of fashion with today's youth, who are now seeking more vibrant city lifestyle. Well, then who will then meet this added demand? Part of the answer will come from Africa. Africa has 25% of the world's rain-fed arable land and yet to contribute minimally to the world food supply. But this is changing. Huge investment is going on into Africa, agriculture and infrastructure. ETG at the forefront of this change. We are empowering African smallholder farmers in 25 African countries, and we are investing in all parts of the supply chain. I cannot overstate the importance of Africa in the pulses supply chain, and in closing, I leave you with the thought: within our lifetime, Africa will become the bread basket of the world. Thank you.
Shri Praveen Dongre, President, Indian Pulses and Grains Association, Mr. Hakan Bachechi, President, CISLS, Shri Venkat Chari, Chairman, MCX, Shri Jignesh Shah, from Chairman of, Vice Chairman of MCX, Shri Mahesh Patel, Chairman, Export Trading Group, Shri Kothari, Vice Chairman of Indian Pulses and Grains Association, ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate Indian Pulses and Grains Association for organizing the Global Pulses Conclave 2012. I am very happy to note that IPGA has successfully brought together all the stakeholders from India as well as from abroad in the pulses sector under a single umbrella. The present conclave assumes great importance for India because there has always been a demand-supply gap in pulses in India, and the gap is met through imports. The conclave is an opportunity for India to take stock of the global pulses scenario and trace prospects based on which future course of action can be decided for this important sector. This conclave assumes greater importance for the representatives of the trading community who have come to participate from all over the world, as India is not only the largest consumer, but also a major producer of pulses in the world and continues to remain the trendsetter for pulses trade. I am sure all of you present here will take full advantage of this event to get the latest update in the sector so as to develop business strategies with your Indian counterparts. I thank the organizers for organizing this important event and inviting me and my colleagues to share some of our thoughts on the policy issues related to the sector. We all know that pulses assume an important position in the diet of an average Indian, as many of us are vegetarian, and pulses are the main source of our protein requirements. The major varieties consumed in India are pigeon peas, known as tur or arhar in India, moong, that is mung beans, urad, black matpe, gram, and masoor, that is masoor. Of note, we have been promoting consumption of yellow peas also, as these are comparatively affordable and available in large quantities, can be imported in large quantities into India, and have similar food values as other pulses. With the rising incomes and changing pattern of demand in India, consumption of pulses has been steadily rising, though a clear demand profile is not available. Suffice to say that availability will need to be augmented to meet growing per capita demand and the dormant demand from the less affluent section of our society. India has achieved a record production of 18.24 million tons last year, that is 2010-11, year ending March 2011, which was a record increase of 23.4% over previous year 2009 and 10. Approximately 55% of this increase was due to increase in area under pulses cultivation, and about 40% was due to improvement in yield and productivity. India has witnessed both an increase in production and productivity of pulses, though on a smaller scale during last decade. Despite increase in production, availability is still inadequate to meet the domestic demand. A number of measures have been taken by government over last 50 years to enhance production, productivity, and availability of pulses in the country. The fourth five-year plan from 69-70 to 73-74 has started a centrally sponsored scheme for pulses development. This was followed by other schemes in 1986, and another scheme was done during 1997 to 2003 in collaboration with UNDP, when pulses was identified as a priority sector in Indian agriculture. At present also, a large number of schemes are being implemented to give a fillip to the production of pulses in the country. As regards imports, India imported 3.5 million tons of pulses in 2009-10, which was a record. Last year, because of improved domestic production, the imports were 2.69 million tons. In the current year, from April to December 2011, the imports have been 2.4 million tons as against 2.25 million tons during the same period last year. With the above levels of imports, domestic availability of pulses has increased from 14.6 million tons in 2005-06 to more than 20 million tons in 2010-11, recording an annual compound rate of growth of 5.8% per annum. Imports of pulses into India during the past 6 years increased at a faster rate of 7.9% per annum than the rate of increase of domestic production, which was 5.14% per annum, implying growing import dependency of India for meeting its pulse requirements. However, the availability of trade as well as actual trade of pulses in international market is quite small as compared to crops like wheat, rice, coarse grains, edible oil seeds, and edible oils. For instance, India imports a large quantity of pulses like urad, that is black matpe, pigeon peas, and mung beans from Myanmar, gram from Australia and Africa, yellow peas from Canada and France. For meeting our future import requirements, we need to keep a close watch on the development in pulse sectors in these countries as well as Africa, as Mr. Patel has brought out that Africa is becoming more and more important, especially for the pulse which is in great demand in India, that is pigeon peas, tur or arhar. Not only the domestic demand for pulses is increasing, available market reports indicate that the pulses demand in countries which are not traditional consumer pulses or pulses is also growing, which is some sort of concern for us. As regard in the price scenario, the current year both domestic and international prices of pulses have been lower than in the previous year for most of the pulses. A recent report indicated that there are sizable stocks of imported pulses available in India. This stock position and the current year's production, estimated at around 17.2 million tons, is expected to keep prices on softer side as well as overall availability is anticipated to be satisfactory. However, the future trends in domestic and international prices of pulses is difficult to judge. This is because there are no futures trading in pulses, as has been brought out by Mr. Chari in his speech. In the international market and in domestic market also, the future trading is allowed only in gram. The market therefore have to be closely watched continuously. Besides special targeted programs for improving production of pulses in India, and other fiscals and other measures have also been taken by government to keep the prices of pulses and availability adequate and prices in control. These include bringing import duty on import of pulses to zero. However, export of pulses are also not allowed except to limited extent. One variety called Kabuli gram export is allowed, and some limited quantities of organic pulses are also allowed to be exported. Apart from that, pulses export from India is not allowed to ensure domestic availability. There are also other restrictions on trade, which state governments in India can put stock limits on stocking on pulses by the traders. The government of India has also asked some of its public sector undertakings to import pulses to supplement efforts of the private traders. This initiative is still operational till 31st of March 2012. There has been a demand that the unutilized capacity of pulses processing plants in the country and modernization of plants is necessary. We are considering the proposal of the Association of Pulses Manufacturers and Exporters of India to permit export of milled pulses against the import of raw pulses to help improve the performance of the pulses processing mills. The department is keeping a constant vigil on the international production, prices, and trade scenario of pulses, and also on the changing consumption pattern in the rest of the world. In view of the reports, the demand of pulses is increasing in the countries I mentioned, which have not been traditional consumers of pulses. Through deliberations, discussions, and negotiations, based on vast pool of experience of the dignitaries present here, I am sure the next 2 days will be very eventful and fruitful in garnering issues, working out business strategies, and crystallizing policy inputs that will benefit all of us present here today, as well as those who are not present but have been directly or indirectly associated with the pulses sector. My senior colleagues from the ministry, as well as chairman of Forward Market Commission, regulator of Commodity Exchanges India, are also actively participating in this conclave. We'll keenly await the outcome of the conclave, which will be of great help to Government of India in its policy formulation. As regards 2016 being declared as Year of Pulses, I must say that we support all endeavors to improve production and availability of pulses in the market. I am not sure of the contours of the support which Government of India can do, but we are open to extend all possible support for such events. I congratulate Mr. Praveen Dongre and his team for making Herculean effort to make this event a success, and also I am thankful to the organizers for inviting me and my colleagues for this major event, and I wish all success to this conclave. Thank you.
I have a funny feeling I'm going to say more than just a few comments because I have a bit more than 2 or 3 minutes to speak, so I will try to make it as interesting as I can. I want to thank Pravin Dongre and the association for inviting me and for showing so much confidence in the work that I've been doing over the years and in the thoughts that I can bring to you today. I appreciate that greatly. One of the things is I was born in Manitoba, which thinks of itself as being in Western Canada. People in Western Canada, where I now live, think it's part of Eastern Canada. But it is an agricultural province. And it didn't matter what I did. I tried to get involved in writing novels. I tried to get involved in cinema and all kinds of things like that. But every step along the way as I grew up, I was drawn back to agriculture. Whether it was at university, I was studying arts. I ended up talking to a class in agricultural economics. I finished university and was looking for work in journalism. The first thing I did was write a history of the cooperative movement in agriculture in Western Canada. That project was over. I looked for another job in journalism. I became a reporter for a newspaper called Report on Farming, which is an agricultural newspaper. I spent my whole life in agriculture as a writer and as an export grain trader, and now for the last several years as a market analyst. And the one thing that to me is very exciting is to come to a country like India where agriculture is taken as seriously as it should be by all people in the world. And I really appreciate that opportunity to be here where agriculture is front page news instead of a little tiny paragraph buried somewhere in the back part of the newspaper. Pravin Dongre asked me to look more than past next year into the future, to look at the outlook for pulses and things like that. The problem is that I start working on something a little bit into the future and I keep asking myself, well, what next? What next? So I went much farther into the future than I was asked. One of the things that I looked at the population growth statistics for the world, it's growing currently at about 1% per year. In about 25, 30 years, it'll slow to around 0.5% per year of population growth. The average net, I looked at that, and then I took a look at the average caloric needs by sex and by age group, and projected that against the population growth, and it became apparent that agricultural output, food output, needs to rise by slightly more than 1% in order to keep pace with the growth of population through to the year 2050. One of the things that brought to mind, and you'll see this when I look at the slides, is that things like ethanol, the ethanol mandates in the United States,